The glass doors of the tall corporate building slid open, and the alien girl stepped inside with careful steps. Her hands clutched a small folder, the only thing she owned that looked professional. Her outfit was plain, simple cloth stitched together in an old design. It was clean but not stylish, and the moment she entered the lobby, eyes turned toward her. The room was filled with people wearing sharp suits, shiny dresses, and polished uniforms. She lowered her gaze, feeling their judgment. She knew she looked different, and she could already hear the whispers. The receptionist at the front desk was an alien woman with bright scales and golden jewelry that sparkled under the lights. She lifted her head, looked at the newcomer, and smirked. Her sharp eyes traveled from the girl's shoes to her collar, and she laughed softly, loud enough for others to hear. "You came here like this?" she said. "This is not a farm. This is a company of humans. We keep standards here." The girl's cheeks burned. She pressed her folder closer to her chest and tried to speak, but her throat felt dry. A few employees near the desk laughed along, pretending to hide their amusement. The receptionist leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Why don't you go home, little one? You clearly don't belong here." Her words dripped with poison, and the girl's heart sank deeper. She wanted to defend herself, but fear locked her lips. She had already felt out of place. Now the whole room knew it. She whispered, I have an interview." Her voice was so soft that the receptionist raised her brows in fake surprise. "An interview?" she said loudly. "With who? The janitors?" More laughter spread in the room, and the alien girl's eyes filled with heat. She thought of turning back, of leaving before she embarrassed herself more. Her people already thought humans never accepted outsiders. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was a fool to come here. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed across the lobby. The crowd fell quiet as a tall figure appeared from the corridor. It was the human boss himself, dressed in a dark suit, his sharp eyes scanning the lobby. He was not the type to wander outside his office without reason. Every employee straightened instantly, some whispering nervously. The receptionist froze, then quickly adjusted her posture, hoping he hadn't noticed her mockery. The human boss's gaze landed on the girl standing near the desk. He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if studying her. The girl tried to shrink into herself, wishing he would not notice the humiliation on her face. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would echo in the silence. What is going on here? His voice was calm, but carried power. Nobody dared to speak. The receptionist forced a smile and said quickly, "Nothing, sir. Just a mistake. This girl, she seems lost. She says she has an interview, but..." The human boss raised a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. He stepped closer to the alien girl, his gaze steady, unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing. The girl's breath shook in her chest. She thought he would tell her to leave. She thought he would agree she did not belong. But then his voice cut through the silence, strong and clear. "Hire her, right now." The words struck the room like thunder. Gasps spread across the lobby. The receptionist blinked, her jaw falling open. "Sir? But she hasn't even." "I said hire her," he repeated, firmer this time, his eyes never leaving the girl. His tone left no space for argument. The alien girl's mind went blank. She stared at him, wide-eyed, not sure if she had heard correctly. Around her, the whispers changed tone. Shock, confusion, disbelief. The receptionist stammered. "But her outfit? She isn't even." The human boss turned his head slowly toward the receptionist. His stare was sharp, like steel. "Do you think I care about her outfit?" His words were low, but everyone could hear the weight behind them. The receptionist swallowed hard, her scales paling. The girl felt her chest tighten with a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief because someone had defended her, fear because she did not understand why. Why would the human boss take her side? He did not know her. He had never met her. And yet, he had spoken as if he had already chosen her. Employees exchanged uneasy looks. Some muttered that the boss must have seen something. Others whispered that maybe she had a secret connection. The receptionist sat frozen, humiliated, her earlier laughter dead in her throat. The human boss gave the girl one last nod before turning back toward his corridor. "Don't waste time. Put her on the list. She starts today." His words left no room for doubt, and then he walked away, leaving a stunned silence behind him. The alien girl's hands trembled around her folder. She tried to speak, to thank him, but her voice would not come. She could still feel the mocking stares of those around her, but they were mixed now with something else: curiosity. Everyone wanted to know why. What had the human boss seen in her? The receptionist pressed her lips together, glaring at the girl with cold fury. She had been embarrassed in front of everyone, and she would not forget it. But for now, she could only force a fake smile and process the papers. The girl took a shaky step toward the desk, her chest heavy with questions. She had entered the building prepared for rejection, but instead, she had been chosen in front of everyone. She could not understand it. She could not even believe it. As the employees whispered in corners and the receptionist handed her the documents with stiff hands, the girl kept hearing his words echo in her head. Hire her. Right now. Why had he said it with such certainty, as if he already knew her? What did he see that no one else could? And why, for the first time in her life, did she feel like her presence truly mattered? The morning light spilled through the high glass walls of the building as the alien girl walked nervously toward her new desk. Her uniform still looked plain compared to the polished clothes of others, but now she carried an ID badge with her name on it. The card felt heavy, almost unreal, as if she was dreaming. She had never thought she would make it this far. Around her, whispers followed. Some voices were filled with mockery, some with curiosity, and a few with open anger. She sat at her station, unsure of what to do first. The receptionist, who had mocked her the day before, walked past with a smug grin. "Try not to get lost today," she said under her breath, loud enough for people nearby to laugh. The girl lowered her head but stayed silent. She remembered the human boss's voice and how strong it sounded. That memory was the only thing giving her courage. Her first task came quickly. A pile of strange files appeared on her desk, more than what any new worker should be given. Some of the documents were written in codes, others in alien languages she only half understood. It looked like someone wanted her to fail on her very first day. She knew who it was. She could see the receptionist watching her from across the room with a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. The girl's hands shook as she opened the first file. She forced herself to breathe slowly. She read line after line, her sharp ears picking up hidden patterns in the words. Her people had always been skilled in listening, in catching details others missed. She used that gift now. Within an hour, she had already organized the files better than anyone expected. By noon, she was called into a conference room. She thought it would be a normal meeting, but the human boss was there. His tall frame leaned against the table, arms crossed, eyes focused on her. "You," he said, pointing at her, "will take notes today. Watch carefully. Listen." Her chest tightened. Around the table sat senior employees with years of experience, all dressed sharply, all glaring at her as if she had stolen their place. She sat quietly in the corner, her hands ready on the digital pad. The meeting began. Clients from another alien race were speaking, making promises about trade and supply chains. At first, everything sounded normal, but then her ears caught something odd, a pause in one man's tone, a faint tremor in his voice when he said numbers. To others it was nothing, but to her it screamed falsehood. She wrote quickly, noting the lie. The human boss glanced at her from across the room, as if he sensed she had found something. He continued the meeting, asking more questions. Each time she listened, she caught more small breaks in speech, more words that did not match. By the end, she had filled her pad with warnings. When the meeting was over, the clients left with polite smiles. The employees began praising themselves for what looked like a good deal. But then the human boss raised his hand. "Stop!" His voice was low, but heavy with authority. He turned to the alien girl. "Speak." Her heart jumped into her throat. Everyone stared at her. She wanted to shrink into her chair, but his steady gaze gave her strength. She explained, in a soft but clear voice, how the clients had lied about their numbers. She pointed out the exact words and tones that gave them away. At first, the room was silent. Then, laughter burst out from one of the older men. "Ridiculous," he said. "She's a child. She doesn't know business." Others nodded in agreement, but the human boss did not. He pressed a button, pulling up hidden data on the screen. The numbers matched her notes exactly. The clients had indeed tried to cheat them. The room fell silent again, but this time it was a silence of shame. The employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some avoided her eyes, while others looked at her with shock. The human boss looked directly at her and said, "Good work." Her chest swelled with pride. She lowered her head quickly, not wanting anyone to see the tears that threatened to fall. No one had ever praised her like that before, especially not in front of so many powerful people. When the meeting ended, whispers followed her back into the lobby, but these whispers were different from the morning ones. Now people were asking questions. How did she know? Was it luck? Did the boss plan this? The receptionist stood near her desk, her expression sour. She said nothing this time, only glared with narrow eyes. The girl sat again at her station, hands still trembling from the experience. She replayed the moment in her head, when he had told her to speak, when he had backed her words with truth. It felt like the ground under her feet had shifted. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer just the poor girl with the wrong outfit. But at the same time, she felt uneasy. Why had the human boss chosen her in the first place? How did he know she would succeed? Did he already understand her hidden skill? Or was he testing her, pushing her into fire to see if she would burn or shine? As the day ended, she walked out of the building under the setting sun. Her badge glimmered faintly, and her steps felt lighter than before. Yet deep inside, a knot of questions grew stronger. The human boss had placed trust in her, but trust this heavy always carried danger. She could not stop thinking about the receptionist's cold stare and the way some employees whispered with jealousy. She had shown her value, yes, but she had also painted a target on her back. And in that moment, she realized something important. This was only the beginning. The building hummed with quiet tension the next morning as the alien girl stepped inside. She felt the weight of many eyes on her, heavier than before. Yesterday had changed everything. She had gone from being mocked to being noticed, and being noticed in this place was dangerous. Some workers looked at her with curiosity, some with jealousy, and a few with outright hostility. The receptionist, who once mocked her loudly, now stayed silent, but her stare was sharper, filled with bitterness. The girl moved carefully to her desk. She had expected more files waiting to bury her, but instead there was a single message on her screen. Report to the top floor. Human boss requests your presence. Her heart skipped. She had never been to the top floor. That was where only the most trusted workers and powerful visitors went. Her hands trembled as she pressed the elevator button, each floor number glowing until the doors finally opened to a hall so silent it felt sacred. The human boss was waiting in a glass-walled office. He stood with his back to her, looking out at the city that spread endlessly under the sky. When she entered, he spoke without turning. You heard them yesterday. You caught what no one else could. Tell me how. Her throat tightened. She wanted to hide her secret, but his voice left no room for lies. Slowly, she explained. My people, we can hear things others cannot. Vibrations, changes in tone, the way truth and lies sound different. I was born with it stronger than most. When someone lies, I feel it inside, like a string pulled too tight. He turned then, his eyes sharp but not unkind. And you never told anyone this before? She shook her head. If others know, they use us. They treat us as tools, not people. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The human boss studied her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Good, keep it hidden, but with me, you will use it. Before she could respond, the door opened. Several alien clients entered, dressed in fine robes and carrying digital contracts. They smiled broadly, but their eyes glowed with greed. The girl froze, realizing she was being tested. The boss gestured for her to stay. Sit, listen. The meeting began. The clients spoke smoothly, praising the company, offering deals that sounded generous. To any ordinary ear, it was perfect. But to her, the lies rang like bells. Every time they promised a fair share, their voices trembled with falsehood. Every time they mentioned trust, the tone flattened unnaturally. She wrote quick notes, her fingers shaking as she tried to keep up. One of the clients leaned forward with a smile that looked too polished. This agreement will benefit both sides. Your company will grow stronger and our people will prosper. His voice sounded clean, but beneath it she caught the hiss of deceit. He meant for his people to prosper, but not theirs. She knew it. The human boss's eyes flicked toward her. He had noticed the way her pen moved faster when that client spoke. He allowed the meeting to go on longer, then finally said, Enough. Let us pause. The clients exchanged confused looks, but they stayed silent. The boss turned to the girl. "Tell us." Her heart pounded so hard it made her chest ache. All the powerful faces turned toward her. She took a deep breath and said quietly, "They are lying. They hide numbers. They twist words. They plan to take much more than they give. If you sign, you lose everything." The room went silent. One of the senior employees scoffed, slamming his palm on the table. "She's just a child. How dare you claim such things without proof?" The clients looked offended, pretending to be insulted. But the human boss remained calm. He pressed a button, and the hidden surveillance program displayed the client's background checks on the screen. Data flowed across the glass wall. The numbers revealed everything she had said. The clients had been exposed, their plans uncovered. Their faces turned pale, their smiles broke, and without another word, they stood and left. Gasps filled the room. Some employees stared at the girl with awe, others with fear. The boss turned to her again, his voice steady. "Good work. You've saved us from ruin." She lowered her head quickly, not trusting her voice. She had saved them, but she had also painted herself brighter on the map. Now everyone knew she was not ordinary. When the meeting ended, the room buzzed with whispers. Some muttered that she must be dangerous. Others whispered that she was lucky. A few wondered aloud if the boss had brought her here for this very reason. The receptionist, watching from outside the glass walls, clenched her teeth. Her jealousy grew like fire, and in her eyes there was more than anger now. There was hate. The girl walked back to her desk, her chest heavy with both pride and dread. She replayed the moment when the boss told her to speak, when he trusted her word against powerful clients. No one had ever trusted her gift before. Her own people feared it. Outsiders mocked her. But he had listened. He had believed. Still, questions swirled in her mind. How had he known to call her to the top floor? How had he guessed her secret so quickly? Had he brought her here because of her skill all along? Or was he protecting something bigger, something she did not yet understand? As the day wore on, her coworkers glanced at her with strange expressions. Some looked impressed, some looked suspicious. She felt both stronger and more alone than ever before. The receptionist passed her desk once, leaning close enough to whisper, "Don't think this will last. You will fall." The girl did not answer. She simply kept her eyes on her work. But deep inside, she knew the receptionist was not just speaking out of anger. She was planning something. And the girl had no idea how dangerous it would become. The days that followed were different. The alien girl was no longer invisible in the office. Every time she walked through the lobby, whispers rose and followed her steps. Some looked at her with admiration, saying she had saved the company from a big loss. Others looked at her with suspicion, as if she had cheated her way to gain the boss's trust. And there were those who looked at her with envy, their eyes cold, their mouths tight with jealousy. Among them, the receptionist's gaze burned the strongest. The receptionist had once been the center of attention in the lobby, the one people went to for information, the one whose voice carried weight. But now she was nothing more than a background shadow whenever the alien girl appeared. The boss himself had given the newcomer more importance than anyone else, and that stung the receptionist like poison. She whispered behind her back, spread lies in corners, and smiled sweetly only when the boss was near. One morning, the girl arrived to find her desk almost buried under new files. These were not ordinary tasks. The documents were mixed, unsigned, some even containing mistakes that made them dangerous. If she had signed them without noticing, the blame would fall on her. She realized someone was trying to trap her. She glanced across the room and saw the receptionist smirking, tapping her polished nails on the desk. Instead of panicking, the girl breathed deeply and began her work. Her sharp ears and careful eyes caught every error. She worked for hours without rest, fixing mistakes, organizing the chaos, and protecting the company from false entries. By the time the sun dipped, she had finished everything. The workers around her, who had been waiting for her to collapse, now stared in silence. She was not weak. She was not easy to break. Later that week, the boss called her again to his private office. She entered nervously, carrying the memory of the receptionist's smirk in her mind. He was standing by a table filled with digital screens. He motioned for her to come closer. "Look," he said. On the screens were records of suspicious trades, movements of credits, and strange codes. They looked like ordinary numbers, but there were hidden patterns. He studied her face as she scanned the files. "Do you notice anything?" he asked. Her heart beat faster. She listened to the rhythm of the records, the patterns almost like voices to her ears. She saw the lies buried within the numbers. "These are not real trades," she whispered. "They are sabotage. Someone inside is helping outsiders." The boss nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "That is what I feared. We are not only fighting competitors outside, we are fighting traitors within." Her chest tightened. She was only a new worker, yet he was trusting her with secrets that even the senior staff did not know. Why her? Why so quickly? But before she could ask, he gave her more files, asking her to review them in silence. "Do not speak of this to anyone," he warned. "Not yet." When she left the office, she felt the weight of his trust pressing down on her shoulders. She knew she had been drawn into something bigger than simple work. There were dangerous games happening in the shadows, and she was now a piece on the board. That evening, as she packed her things, she noticed the receptionist watching her again. But this time, the look was different. It was not just jealousy. There was knowledge in those eyes, as if she had heard something, as if she knew the girl was being pulled closer to the boss. The receptionist's lips curved into a cold smile. Days passed, and the tension in the office grew heavier. The receptionist began whispering more lies. "She only got here because the boss likes her," she told others. "She's spying on us. She will take your jobs." Some believed the rumors. Some began to keep their distance from the girl. She felt the loneliness around her deepen. One night, as she left the building late, she heard soft voices near the back entrance. She stopped, hiding in the shadows. The receptionist was there, speaking to someone cloaked in dark clothing. She couldn't hear every word, but she caught enough to know the truth. The receptionist was passing information to outsiders. She was the traitor. The girl's breath caught. She wanted to run to the boss and tell him, but fear held her still. If the receptionist realized she had been seen, she would strike back. And with her power and connections inside the building, she could destroy the girl's name before anyone believed her. She returned home that night with her mind in chaos. The boss trusted her with secrets, but the enemy was already inside the walls. She wondered if he suspected the receptionist, if that was why he had given her those files. Or was he waiting for her to confirm it? The next morning, the receptionist acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled sweetly at the boss, greeted workers cheerfully, and mocked the girl only when no one was watching. But the girl knew the truth now, and every glance from the receptionist felt sharper, every smile darker. Her days grew harder. Every task she completed, every small success she earned seemed to anger the receptionist more. The whispers grew louder, the traps more dangerous. The girl knew it was only a matter of time before the receptionist struck openly. And deep in her chest, fear mixed with determination. She had come here to prove herself, but now she realized her presence was not just about work. It was about survival. She could no longer be the quiet one, the invisible one. The receptionist wanted her destroyed, and someone outside wanted the company to fall. The girl stood at her desk, clutching her badge, staring toward the boss's office. She knew the storm was coming, and she was right in the middle of it. The air inside the office was heavy that morning, filled with unspoken tension. The alien girl arrived early, hoping to finish her tasks quietly, but she noticed the way people looked at her. Their eyes carried suspicion, their whispers louder than before. Something was wrong. She sat at her desk and opened her screen, only to find messages waiting, reports she had never written, approvals she had never signed. Her chest tightened as she scrolled through them. They were dangerous errors, ones that would make it look like she had betrayed the company. Her heart pounded. Someone had planted these files under her name. She looked across the room and met the cold, satisfied gaze of the receptionist. The woman's lips curved into a cruel smile before she turned away, pretending to work. The girl understood. This was the trap. The receptionist had finally made her move. Soon, voices rose around the office. Workers began to murmur, pointing at her desk. She approved illegal trades. She's been feeding outsiders. The lies spread quickly, faster than she could defend herself. A group of senior employees approached, their faces stiff with anger. One of them slammed a hand on her desk. "You are under suspicion. Security has been called. You will answer for this." Her throat closed up. She tried to speak, tried to say it wasn't her, but the words sounded weak against the growing storm. Security guards appeared, tall and armed, their heavy boots echoing on the floor as they walked toward her. Around her, whispers turned into open accusations. The receptionist stood with folded arms, her expression sweet, as if she was innocent in all this. The girl's vision blurred with fear. This was exactly what the receptionist wanted, to see her dragged out, humiliated, ruined. Her chance at a new life would end here. She thought of running, but where would she go? She thought of staying silent, but that would be the same as admitting guilt. The guards closed in. Then the air shifted. Heavy footsteps entered the lobby, firm and commanding. The crowd parted, falling into silence. The human boss had arrived. His sharp gaze swept the room, then landed on the girl, surrounded by guards. His voice cut like a blade. "What is this?" One of the senior employees stepped forward quickly. "Sir, this girl has been exposed. She has signed illegal approvals and hidden dangerous trades. We cannot risk keeping her here." He held out the files as proof. The boss took the files, scanning them with calm eyes. For a long moment, the silence was unbearable. The receptionist's face glowed with quiet triumph, certain the girl's downfall was complete. The girl could barely breathe. She clutched her badge, her hands trembling, waiting for the boss to say the words that would end her chance forever. But instead, he lowered the files and turned his gaze directly at her. "Do you deny this?" Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to nod. "Yes, it's not me. Someone else planted these. Please, let me prove it." Her voice shook, but her eyes held steady. The room buzzed with disbelief. One of the guards muttered, "She lies to the very end." But the boss raised his hand to silence them. "Evidence," he said firmly. "We do not punish without proof." The receptionist's confident smile faltered slightly. She had not expected him to give the girl a chance. The boss motioned toward the girl. "Show us." Her breath caught. This was her only chance. She placed her hands on the files, listening closely. The numbers, the codes, the words, they carried sound, faint echoes of the voices who had typed them, and she knew. "These were not written by me," she said softly. "The rhythm is wrong. The hand behind them is different. I can feel it." The employees scoffed, but the boss leaned forward. "Who then?" The girl's sharp ears remembered the whisper from the night she had seen the receptionist at the back entrance. She remembered the same tone hidden here, a faint trace of her words. Her heart raced. She looked up slowly, her voice shaking as she pointed across the room. "Her." All eyes turned to the receptionist. She froze, her face pale for a second before she forced a laugh. "Ridiculous. She is lying to save herself. I've worked here for years. She's nothing but a stranger the boss dragged in." The workers murmured, torn between doubt and belief. But the boss did not look away. He studied the receptionist for a long, heavy moment. "Bring the logs," he ordered. Data screens lit up, showing access records, times of entry, and security scans. The truth glared across the glass. At the exact times the false files were created, the receptionist's ID had been active. The silence in the room grew sharp. Gasps spread as the realization hit. The receptionist's mask cracked, her perfect smile twisting into rage. "This is a setup!" she shouted, her voice trembling with panic. But the guards were already moving toward her. The human boss's voice rang out with finality. "You tried to destroy her. You betrayed this company. You are finished here." The receptionist struggled, her voice filled with venom as they grabbed her arms. Her eyes locked on the girl with pure hate. "This isn't over. You will regret this," she spat before being dragged away. The lobby stayed silent long after she was gone. The workers who had once mocked the alien girl now looked at her with a mix of fear and respect. She had stood against a trap and survived. The boss turned to her once more. His voice was calm, steady. "You told the truth when others would have broken. Remember this day. You are stronger than you think." Her heart ached with relief, but also confusion. Why did he defend her so fiercely? Why did he trust her again and again when no one else would? As she sat down at her desk, her body trembling, she realized this fight was far from over. The receptionist was gone, but the shadowy figure she had once met in secret was still out there, watching, waiting, and the girl knew the real danger had only just begun. Night had fallen heavy over the city when the alarm first rang inside the building. A sharp, shrill sound echoed across the halls, red lights flashing as workers scrambled in confusion. The alien girl, sitting late at her desk, looked up with wide eyes. She had been reviewing files left behind from the betrayal of the receptionist, but now the screens around her blinked with warnings. Unauthorized entry detected. Security doors failing. Her chest tightened as she heard footsteps pounding from below. Too many, too heavy. This was not a simple accident. It was an attack. Shouts filled the lower floors as guards rushed toward the disturbance. The girl stood frozen for a moment, then forced herself to move. She followed the others toward the main lobby, her heart hammering. The glass doors at the front shattered with a crash, and dark figures poured inside. Alien mercenaries, armed with glowing weapons, spread across the lobby like a flood. Their eyes were cold, their movements sharp. They weren't here to steal credits or cause random chaos. They were here for something specific. Panic spread among the workers. Some screamed, some tried to run, but the mercenaries blocked every exit. One shouted in a harsh language, his voice commanding the others. The girl's ears picked up the true meaning beneath the words. Find the files. Take the human technology. Her blood ran cold. The rumors had been true. They wanted the company's secrets. In the middle of the chaos, she saw the receptionist, the same one who had been dragged away in shame, standing with the mercenaries now. Her wrists were no longer bound, her face no longer fearful. She smirked when her eyes landed on the girl, her voice cutting through the noise. I told you it wasn't over. The girl's breath caught. The receptionist had returned, not as a worker, but as the enemy's ally. The mercenaries fanned out, knocking aside guards, pushing workers to the ground. The girl wanted to run, but her feet held firm. She remembered the boss's trust, his words telling her she was stronger than she believed. If she fled now, everything would be lost. Suddenly, more footsteps echoed down the grand stairs. The human boss entered, calm but fierce, flanked by a few loyal guards. His presence was like steel cutting through chaos. The mercenaries paused for a heartbeat, sizing him up, but their leader smirked. You cannot stop this human. Hand over the codes, and maybe we will spare the rest. The boss said nothing at first, his gaze sharp as it swept across the room. He noticed the receptionist standing among the mercenaries and gave no sign of surprise. Then his eyes found the alien girl, trembling near the desk. He gave her the smallest nod, a signal of trust, and turned back to the intruders. If you want what we have, you'll have to take it. The mercenaries roared and charged. Blasts of energy lit up the lobby. Guards fell back, fighting with desperate courage. Workers ducked under tables, covering their heads. The receptionist slipped through the chaos, whispering orders to the invaders, guiding them toward hidden rooms. The girl crouched low, her heart racing. She listened. Through the noise of gunfire and shouts, she caught the mercenaries' hidden commands. She could hear their lies, the way they tried to trick the guards into ambushes. Her gift flared stronger than ever. She shouted warnings, her voice cutting through the panic. Left side! They're lying! It's a trap near the stairs! The guards turned just in time, firing back and breaking the ambush. The human boss fought like he had been waiting for this night. He moved with precision, his orders sharp and clear. But he also listened to her. Every time she warned of a lie, he reacted instantly, shifting his men, blocking the enemy's plans. Bit by bit, they pushed the mercenaries back. The receptionist screamed in fury as her careful plans unraveled. She pointed at the girl, her voice shrill. It's her! Kill her first! 3 mercenaries broke from the fight, charging toward the girl's desk. Her chest froze with fear, her legs refusing to move. But before they reached her, the boss was there, his body like a shield. He blocked the strike, knocking them aside, his eyes blazing. You want her? You'll have to go through me. The girl's hands shook as she crawled to the console. She remembered the files the boss had given her, the sabotage hidden in the numbers. She pulled them up quickly, her ears listening for the mercenaries' codes. Then she realized there was a system override buried in the files, one that could seal the upper levels and trap the intruders below. But activating it meant locking herself inside the lower floors as well. She hesitated, fear clawing at her. Then she saw the receptionist grinning, saw the mercenaries closing in again, saw the boss fighting with his back to the wall. Her choice was clear. She slammed her hand on the console, activating the override. Alarms wailed louder, steel doors crashing down across the building. The mercenaries shouted in panic as exits sealed shut, cutting off their escape. The boss turned, his eyes locking on hers. He understood what she had done. His nod carried both pride and worry. Together, they stood against the remaining attackers. With nowhere to run, the mercenaries fought harder, but they were cornered now. Blow by blow, they fell. The last one collapsed with a cry, silence finally falling across the ruined lobby. The workers crawled out from their hiding places, their faces pale, their voices trembling. The guards gathered the wounded, dragging the mercenaries into custody. The receptionist struggled wildly as she was grabbed again, her screams filling the air. "You don't understand. This was only the beginning. He's still out there, and he will come for you both." Her words echoed even as she was dragged away, her eyes burning with madness. The girl leaned against the console, her chest heaving, sweat running down her skin. She could hardly believe she was still alive. Around her, people looked at her differently now, not just with curiosity or jealousy, but with awe. She had helped save them all. The human boss stepped closer, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "You were brave tonight. Without you, we would have lost everything." Her throat tightened, words caught behind the lump of fear and relief. She wanted to ask why he trusted her so much, why he risked himself to protect her. But she could not speak. She only nodded, her eyes wet. As the workers tried to rebuild order in the shattered lobby, the girl looked toward the broken glass doors. The night outside was dark, dark and endless, and somewhere in that darkness, the shadowy figure the receptionist had spoken of was waiting. She shivered. Tonight had been a battle, but the war was far from over. The lobby still smelled of smoke and burnt metal the next morning. Workers whispered as they cleaned broken glass and repaired shattered screens, but their eyes kept darting toward the alien girl. She had gone from an unwanted stranger to the one who had saved them, yet she felt no relief. The receptionist's last words echoed inside her head like a shadow. This was only the beginning. He's still out there. She sat quietly at her desk, her badge heavy on her chest, while the room buzzed with unease. Every sound, every sudden noise made her ears twitch. She could not shake the feeling that someone unseen was still watching. By midday, the human boss called her to his office. The top floor felt even more silent than usual. He stood by the wide glass windows, the city stretching endless beyond him. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "You wonder why I trusted you from the first moment," he said without turning. She froze, her heart skipping. He had spoken the very thought she had carried since that day in the lobby. Slowly, he turned to face her. "It is time you know the truth." Her breath caught as he pressed a button on the desk. The glass walls shifted, revealing hidden screens filled with files and images. On one of them was a picture that made her knees weaken. It was her father. She recognized his face instantly, even though the photo was old. He wore the ceremonial robes of her people, standing beside humans in a treaty hall. "Years ago," the boss said, his voice steady, "your father saved me. He stopped a deal that would have destroyed both our worlds. He protected me with his life, though he owed me nothing. He wore the same kind of simple uniform you wear now. That is why when I saw you in this building, I knew who you were." Her eyes blurred with tears. She had always thought her father's story was forgotten, erased by both humans and her own people. Yet here was proof that it lived in the memory of the most powerful man she had ever met. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she whispered. "Because I needed to know if you carried his strength," he replied. "Clothes can be mocked, appearances can be doubted, but truth reveals itself when tested." She lowered her head, her chest heavy with both pride and sorrow. All the humiliation she had suffered in the lobby, all the whispers about her plain uniform, now felt different. Her outfit was not shameful. It was honorable, a sign of her family's legacy. Before she could speak again, alarms blared across the building. The screens flickered, showing breaches at the outer gates. The receptionist's warning had been true. The shadow behind the mercenaries had arrived. Dark ships hovered above the city, their weapons pointed down like claws ready to strike. The workers screamed as the ground trembled under the shockwaves. The boss's voice cut through the panic. "They've come for the technology, and for you." His eyes locked on her. "Your father's blood makes you more valuable to them than anything else in this building." Her heart raced, fear crawling up her spine. She had thought she was finally safe, but now she was the reason danger was at their doors. "What should I do?" she asked. "You stand with me," he said firmly, "the same way your father once stood with me." Explosions shook the lower floors. The enemy poured in, larger in number than before, armed with heavier weapons. Workers hid in corners, and guards prepared for the worst. The boss walked into the lobby like a wall of steel, the girl following close behind. She listened carefully, her gift burning in her ears. The invaders shouted commands, but she could hear the lies hidden in their words. "They'll flank right," she cried, and the guards shifted in time. "They're faking a retreat," she warned, and the boss led a counterstrike that crushed the ambush. The battle raged, and still the enemies pressed harder. In the chaos, their leader finally stepped forward, a tall alien draped in black armor, his voice like thunder. "Give me the girl," he roared. "She is the key. Hand her over, and I will let the rest of you live." The workers gasped, their eyes turning toward her. For a moment, doubt flickered in their faces. Maybe they would be safer if she was gone. The girl's chest tightened with fear, but then the boss stepped in front of her, his voice sharp and unshakable. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The enemy leader laughed, but the sound carried no joy. He raised his weapon, and the fight exploded again. The boss and the girl fought side by side, his strength and her gift combining like two edges of the same blade. She shouted warnings. He turned them into action. Every time she sensed a lie, he struck true. Together, they became unstoppable. At last, the leader staggered, wounded by the very truth he had tried to twist. The mercenaries fled in chaos, dragging their broken commander with them. Silence fell over the lobby, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. The workers emerged from hiding, their faces pale but alive. The boss turned to the girl, his voice calm despite the destruction around them. "You see now, you were never a mistake here. You were always meant to be part of this." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not from fear. They were from belonging. She understood now why he had defended her on the first day, why he had said, "Hire her, right now." It had not been kindness alone. It had been recognition. He had seen her strength, the same strength her father once carried. The workers began to gather around her, their whispers no longer mocking. Some bowed their heads slightly. Others looked at her with respect. The girl, once humiliated for her simple clothes, now stood taller than ever before. She had faced betrayal, traps, and open war, and she was still here. But even as relief spread through the survivors, she could not forget the warning left behind. The enemy leader's retreat did not mean the danger was gone. Somewhere out there, in the dark corners of space, forces were still watching her, waiting. She stood beside the human boss, the broken lobby around them, and whispered quietly to herself, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning."